how do you respond to the accusations that Chillderburg is a cult?
Wait, is that a real thing?
It's not a cult. It's it's a group of people with similar interests that are interested in taking over a town and dominating people in that town politically. And we do have a ceremony, which I know a lot of cults have a ceremony, but I would say we're not a cult. I've not applied for my tax exempt status, so
Yeah, this is a trick.
Yeah, but that's the ongoing thing is people keep saying it's like a cult, and it's like a cult, but it's not a cult. So.
All right. We'll be watching.
You're listening to the Art and War podcast with your hosts, Mitch and Nathan. Mitch is a former airborne infantry squad leader who now spends most of his time coaching soccer. Nathan is a professional illustrator and an avid shooter with a couple of years of Canadian military experience. Together, they run the Seaburn Art page. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome to the Art and War podcast. I'm B.R. I'm joined by my co-host, Nathan.
Hello.
And today, we need to find a better way to do that.
Today, no, I refuse.
All right, well, it's better than your openings. Anyway.
What openings?
Oh, God. Today we are joined by Jacob. Jacob of Tasting Anarchy and the main organizer of Chillderburg. We are gathering here before, on the, I won't say the eve of Chillderburg numero 5. Go.
20 days out. We're trying out a new location this year, so hopefully that will be a hit. If not, I guess we'll go back to the old location next year. But
yeah.
I've been wanting to move it to a private site and not a state campsite, or actually the old one was a federal campsite. But I just they have a lot of weird restrictions. They're not willing to work with you on a lot of stuff, and because they don't have to, they're just like, so the organization that owned the old site is the Colorado River Authority, and they are worried about dams. They really don't care that much about the camping. So
yeah, they're like, hey, you can camp there if you want. It's kind of an afterthought.
Right. Yeah. But they are, if you want to do anything, if you're like, hey, I want to put on, like, we have the comedy and music. If you say, hey, we want to do this on site. Nope. Why not? Well, because the new site though is Rebecca Creek Campground. It's about 45 minutes south of the old site, but it's still about an hour to Austin, an hour to San Antonio. It's on Canyon Lake, and it's a private site. It looks like it's going to be good. They're going to let us do a show on site. They actually don't seem like they have really any restrictions at all. I went down there a couple weeks ago to talk to her, and I was like, well, what are we allowed to do? What are we not allowed to do? She's like, yeah, do whatever you want. You guys are pretty much the only ones who are going to be here.
Hey. That's good, because when the sun goes down, Chillderburg gets interesting. Yeah. But so I guess we're speaking to I've had you on my show, the BR Hates Fed show. I think I've had you on E-Militia to talk about this. This is a slightly new audience who a lot of people probably wouldn't have heard of Chillderburg before. So in kind of like a brief capture of what this is all about, could you give our audience an idea of what Chillderburg, what it is, and how it came to be?
Yeah. So I guess it would be a gathering of online mutuals from Twitter and mostly Twitter probably, but also from Instagram and places like that. It's, I would say, loosely liberty. It's not part of the libertarian movement, but it's a lot of like Bitcoiners, a lot of 3D printed gun guys, a lot of just gun guys, a lot of that type of stuff, and then just people who are kind of in the liberty sphere that know each other from online. And for me, it's always important to not be perpetually online, to try to to try to meet people in real life. Like, I've always really liked that. I used to run liberty meetups in Virginia when I lived there, and when we were moving out to Texas, I was on Twitter looking for friends and looking for friends in the area that I could hang out with in person, because that's how I am. And I met Car Campit from the Timeline Earth podcast, and he tweeted at one point. He said, this year, in order to protest the Bilderbergs, I'm going to do my own event called Chillderburg, and it's just going to be me drinking alone in my apartment. I thought it was funny. And so I was like, yeah, that's funny, but I also don't really like drinking alone. So like, why don't we all go camping? Because I like to camp. So that was kind of how that started. We moved out here. The first year we were here, we did Chillderburg 1. We had maybe 25 or 30 people. And then I think Chillderburg Dose was the one that you first came to. We had maybe 40 people.
Mm.
And then,
I think my first one was the third. I think.
Oh, was your third? Okay, so third got pretty big. I think we had close to 200 at 3, and then about 250 last time. There's a lot of people who come just for the day and then leave, so it's kind of hard to get an exact head count. But it's just a bunch of people who are I guess adjacent in their freedom philosophy and want to hang out and talk.
Yeah, like the way I kind of summarized it in my article, like right in the last two up, was kind of like it's like a pop-up, and I don't want to put like a broad label on everyone because people, like you said, are from all over, very loose association of like liberty-minded people, but it's kind of like a pop-up anarchist village. Like,
yeah, kind of. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Like over a weekend, all these people come together, and this feeds into something else I want to talk to you about, and something we've talked about before, which is intentional communities. And it's something that started off as like a fun joke on Twitter has turned into real like networking and community building. Like just sitting around, a couple guys having White Claws and mead and whatever else moonshine that people have brought. That people and other non-liquid substances. There is plenty of people like sharing ideas and being like, oh wow, like we're not talking politics, but we're talking like culture, we're talking lifestyle, we're talking like something.
I guess like what a lot of the sort of post-libertarian people, I'm not really sure if they care for that or whatever is their, I guess they call it praxian, is like they want, and that's kind of how I am too. Like I used to be very involved in libertarian politics when I lived in Virginia, and I just kind of got to the point where I was like, I don't really see this as being particularly effective, but I do think that people having friends and other people that they can rely on is effective in changing basic. I mean, you're not gonna. I mean, like, there's not gonna be well, I mean, maybe there will be, but there's not gonna be a Chillderburg president in the White House. It's going
someday.
To be. Yeah, maybe someday. But sort of on the intentional community side, it's like you and I were talking about this a little bit before we started. There's a lot of small towns in America that are kind of empty, and and I think it's kind of part of Western culture that the small town unity is something that I guess we should strive for, and I think that has been kind of removed. And my theory on it is that it's because of fiat currency, is that it's very easy for municipalities and governments to build roads everywhere. Once Bitcoin takes over or the fiat currency is not allowed anymore, they won't be able to maintain these massive interstate highway systems, and you're going to end up seeing people go back to these small towns. So my idea is to get ahead of that and have the small town. People like me, I work from home. All I need is internet. And now we've got pretty good wireless internet, and also most small towns have high speed internet now. So I think that's kind of the direction we're going. We're going into a much, and that's sort of what Chillderburg to me is kind of the start for. Is like meet the people that you could be neighbors with, and that you would like to be neighbors with, and then try to do that.
Yeah, like it's so awesome seeing people from. Like they might have very different jobs, or they might be from completely different parts of the country, but they're meeting people who they could be neighbors, or they have like a shared identity, and it's like, oh yeah, it would be great to build something with you. And even like loosely, we're seeing people start to like collaborate because they met at Chillderburg. Like they'll start a little project, might be across the country. I mean, Mel has like radicalized everyone with sourdough bread. I think she's slowly taking over the country. And
I like Mel.
she's like gone back to a quiet. She's manipulating from the shadows, which I respect. Slowly dominating with sourdough bread and God knows what else she's got up her sleeve. But and anime podcasts, I guess. But that's her control. But no, we had like Mike Polymath. He's a great kind of agorist gardener type, and he was sharing plenty of good knowledge on that, and collaborating with all sorts of other people and spreading that kind of knowledge. And I mean, people with small businesses come there and are able to kind of sell and advertise and talk to various people who might know something they don't, might be able to hook them up with other people and help them grow. And it's really like not just for it's a great event to chill at, but it's a great event to network at and to really build something.
Yeah, I think we're all very like I wouldn't even say surprising. There's a lot of talent in our community, and there's just not that talent working out.
I think that there's something to be said about, and I felt this way at SHOT Show. I felt this way a couple times, but if you kind of have, and I hate to say it, in the mainstream eye, the sort of fringe politics, that probably we and most people listening to this share, which are just the when I say fringe politics, I mean the sort of discourse you're not going to get on CNN or PR or whatever, Fox News. It is really, really nice if you're from a place like myself, or I'm sure a lot of our listeners, or anywhere else where you don't know anyone else who thinks this way, and you can meet up with a community that actually says like, hey, these beliefs that you have, like, don't hurt people and don't take their stuff and don't send armed men to, I don't know, like kick your door in over, a stalk on a barrel that's too short, or like eating some fungus that grows in the ground. I believe in that.
Went down.
Yeah. And it is really, really nice. And I think it's really good to have a community or an event or whatever that people can go to and not feel alone.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things, Michael Malice talks about this all the time, that one of the things that the internet has really brought is the ability to find your people.
Yeah.
So the example he always uses is if you're in high school in the 50s and you like to breed hamsters, you're the weirdo at the high school. But now, if you're in high school and you like to breed hamsters, there's thousands of people online who also like to breed hamsters, and you can talk to them and be friends. So, but I also think there's a component that maybe because like people that are roughly around my age, we kind of went into the internet and then became very internet people. We forgot about the personal, like in-person type stuff.
Yeah, and this is kind of quite grounding for a lot of people to have that experience. Like for a lot of people, it might be the first time they ever actually like do something, IRL offline and meeting up with like genuinely. I've talked to so many people who are like, wow, there's like a lot of people here who are really cool and like a lot like me. And I've seen so many people. I definitely had it my first year at Chillderburg. It was of itself kind of trippy. Like I'd been to rallies, I'd been to like big shooting groups, like of mostly libertarians and anarchists and stuff, but it's nothing quite like mixing with a bunch of people who aren't there to do like one thing. Like if you're going out shooting, like you're all shooters, whatever, but if you're going out to an event like this where it's a bunch of people with a similar kind of tribe but very different lives and skill sets and interests and stuff, it's a much wider community, and you're like, oh wow, like there's really something here, and it's, I mean, very comforting, to be honest. It was like cathartic as hell to be like, wow, like this is really something. This isn't just me and 5 people in a forum somewhere. Like this is an actual community, just decentralized.
Yeah, and I think that's really, I think a lot of people seeing it in person kind of gives you that realization. And I've that's kind of the stuff that I've always been interested in. Is anytime I meet somebody this is kind of how my wife and I we met online, and I think like a couple of maybe 2 or 3 weeks into seeing each other, I was like, okay, we're compatible, but we need to meet in person to make sure we're compatible in person. Drove up to New York, saw her. 6 months later, we were married. So, like it was like it's a seeing people in person, like I don't know how to describe it, but there's like a certain amount of like time where people get really comfortable being online. But I think that you kind of go to the next level by being in person, and then you start realizing things like, oh, there's actually somebody in my town who thinks like me and is right here, because you start talking to people and you go, oh, I'm from here, and you're from here, and you're like, oh, that's only 45 minutes away. We can meet up for beers or whatever halfway through, and then now you got a friend that is local. And I think that's another thing too. Like, the liberty movement is mostly men, and men need friends, and it's very healthy for us to have friends. But these days, they don't, and I think there's a kind of a gap in that, like that for whatever reason, there's not a male camaraderie, and I think that's good. But also, the wives and significant others and the ladies who attend, it's good for them also. They should have friends, and they should have real life friends, not just people online. The people online are great, but make them your real life friends.
Yeah, and that's something I've really loved to see is like, as people keep on coming back, they like, myself, I came alone first year. I came with Spirit Resistance and Typo from Biting the Bullet. And, we had like 3 guys stuffed into a truck for 14 hours. And then the next time out, I came out with my lady, and another friend brought his, and a couple more friends. And it was like, I mean, our camp was a lot nicer that year, for one.
Yeah.
But
You guys last year you guys had a really cool camp.
Yeah, like Little Amsterdam. It was we're gonna be a bit more humble this year, unfortunately. I'm gonna be in like a little body bag, a camo body bag probably, but and no lady, but because I'm flying in.
Do you want one of my spare tents?
I don't know. I'm gonna bring my.
I know those bivvy tents. They're not like they're not uncomfortable, but it seems kind of. I don't know. You're not like deep woods. It seems kind of. I don't want to say humiliating, but
where's B.R? He's in his body bag.
Yeah. Just like breathing sarcophagus made of like cloth on the ground.
I don't know. It might be kind of a vibe, or I'm gonna set it up and be like, man, what did I bring this for?
Yeah,
I don't know. We will see.
I've got my French F1 that I got from Misty Mountain, not a paid ad. I've had it for years. It's great. It fits
It's
several
French,
people
though.
if you want. It is French. It is unfortunate.
Does it smell?
Yeah. No. But the French
Really?
speak as well, which is burning banks down and tents. So
Based. That's just those 2 things.
yeah.
Thank you, France. But
And crepes.
and crepes. But no, like, as people are getting more comfortable, like, they might come and scout it out and be like, oh, these people are like cool. They're not like a bunch of, like, I mean, we are online weirdos, but like, we're nice online weirdos. It's
Right.
And it's a really good, peaceful, relaxed vibe. And as people get a chance to like return, they're like, oh, well, I kind of want this to be a mainstay of my year, and I kind of want to keep on building this community. Like, I'm gonna bring my lady with me, and some people bring their kids with them, and like, my God, those homeschooled kids are like little geniuses running around, like asking the most poignant questions. You're like, oh my God, like it's incredible. It's so cool. And,
those families last year were really cool. I hope they come again this year, but I don't know if they will or not. But that was really neat. I know that they kind of like travel around.
Yeah,
they just happened to be in the area, and I think Kelly invited them from Owen Glass, and they just came and set up their buses and had a gaggle of kids running around, and
it was
super independent.
Yeah, because like that stuff, it kind of reaffirms for like those of us who don't have kids yet, but are maybe planning on starting a family, planning on homeschooling, and then you might not necessarily get the chance to rub shoulders with parents who are homeschooling, depending on where you're at in the country and what your community looks like where you are. So then you come to this and you see a family like very successfully homeschooling their kids. Kids are so happy, they're so bright, and you're like, oh wow, like I'm not just crazy for thinking this is the right thing to do for my family. Like, I'm seeing it right in front of me that it's incredible.
Yeah.
And there's so many like little things like that you see in various ways, like coming to an event like this.
Yeah, and that's I mean, especially like I was a homeschooled kid, so it's especially important for those kids to see other kids who do that, because when you're homeschooled and most of your friends are like public school people, you kind of go like, oh well, am I weird or whatever? But then once you start interacting and doing stuff with other homeschool people, you're like, oh no, I'm not weird, they're weird. So, and it's it's nice.
Yeah. It's nice that as these things are kind of increasing in popularity, we have a chance to really get together and like showcase these things. Like, you know, people starting their own businesses and bringing those and like advertise them to others. People,
Yeah.
you know, homeschooling and showing like, hey, this works. And like, it's, I think that's, you know, talking about intentional communities and stuff. Chillderburg itself, even though it started as like just kind of a camaraderie thing and kind of like a jokey get together,
Yeah.
it's now turned into like an absolute proof of concept. Like,
Yeah, I think it, and that's kind of what's encouraged Victoria and me to try to orient toward having it be like a permanent thing where people can live there, and then once a year we do the event so that people who can't live there can be there. But that's sort of our trajectory, is having a permanent camp place that we own, and then from there figuring out how to like take over this small town. So that's just kind of like
That would be
property. Yeah.
I've always had this weird fantasy in my head of, you know, buying one of those dirt cheap ghost towns in the middle of nowhere with some friends and rebuilding it.
There's so many of those.
Yeah, that's actually the American dream. And not getting Waco'd, hopefully. But
yeah,
that's a conversation for another time.
How's it going, lads and ladies? B.R and Nathan here to take a quick break to tell you about our Patreon. Not only do we want to continue improving the quality of what we can do here on Art and War, but we want to push what we do all over at Art, from the guides to pursuing video content and keeping us warm during another winter of illness and death, and the Patreon helps us get after it.
But what's in it for you? Our Patreon subscribers enjoy 5 different tiers of exclusive perks, ranging from all the content we'd post on a pre-Zuckerberg Instagram, downloadable high-resolution guides, targets such as Redcoat Skinwalkers, John Harvey Kellogg, seasonal targets, and more. Behind-the-scenes info like my personal art, introducing all new exclusive mini-podcast episodes, and at our highest tier, get monthly art commissions created by yours truly.
You can find our Patreon via the link in this episode's description at patreon.com/cbonart, or in the C-Bun Art page's bio on Instagram. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to the show.
That's what's so wild about it. I was telling BR before the show started, I used to do cross-country bicycle riding. And when you're riding through a lot of these Midwest states, it's just, especially off the interstate highway system, because that's where you're able to drive or ride your bike. It's just town after town after town after town with, they used to have a population of 2,000. Now they have a population of maybe 150, and they're all seniors. And it's just like all of these towns have been gutted. I think there's opportunity there to, especially for, and I see this a lot for people my age and people younger than me are less interested in this sort of condensed city life that, where you are surrounded by a whole bunch of people, but you're really alone.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of one of the issues that Western culture has right now, is that people are very, it's, even though you're online and you're talking to people, even though you're in a city and there's people around you, you have no actual connections with anybody, and that's why I think a lot of people are very depressed and have problems. And you know, they don't go to church anymore. They don't go down to the local Rotary Club and hang out with those types of people. So that's kind of my idea, is that we get people to do this. Maybe one of the things I always talk about is starting the Order of the Sasquatch, and make that something like the Mooses or something like that, where you get like people together, they can do stuff together, you know, charitable type things, and just hang out at the lodge and be friendly and have some sort of focus. Because I'm religious, but I know a lot of our people are not. A secular type of thing, like the Mooses or the Lions or whatever, you know, those old fraternity types, having something like that, I think is good for the community. And again, this, you know, because I blame everything on the government, but
We do too.
I think this is a government problem, is that a lot of the services that you used to get out of these fraternal organizations have been co-opted by the state. And so now you're atomized. You don't have any reason to be together. Like it used to be, you got your health insurance through your local fraternity. And you used to get, you know, if you got hurt on the job, that your local community took care of you, rather than you having to buy this mandated disability insurance or whatever that is difficult to navigate and is, you know, doesn't, and also they don't care if you're better. Whereas the people at your lodge, they do care. So, because they know you. And that people's retirement was part of that. You know, there's a gap there's a gap in our society, and I think it's because the government has co-opted a lot of those things and then done a very poor job at it. But now it's kind of like, you know how they always say, like, if the government made shoes, it would be very difficult for people to conceptualize that you could make shoes privately.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the situation is that whenever you're like, well, I don't think Obamacare should exist, or I don't think that I don't really think your health insurance should be connected to your job. They go, oh, you want people to not have health insurance? I'm like, no, I just want it to be done differently. And we're starting to see that too. I think people are kind of moving off of that kind of thing. And I think COVID really, really accelerated this because people are kind of like, oh, I don't trust this at all. And now and actually kind of back to the homeschool thing, people saw what their kids were learning in school and they went, wow, I don't like this. And I think that's accelerated it. And I think that we're going to see within our lifetimes this sort of it's not re-ruralization, but the re-small towning of America, especially once, like I said, if we get hyper-Bitcoinization or the fiat system fails and we're on some sort of other currency, when they don't have unlimited access to credit, they're just not going to be able to maintain these roads. And that's what's going to naturally happen, is where there's things that people want, that's where people will live. It won't be these like I live in the suburbs. It won't be these massive suburban tracts that then funnel everybody into the city to work. It'll be back to the way people live naturally, which is in smaller communities with resources nearby.
Yeah. I love that. I love the sound of that.
Yeah.
I've seen that kind of natural trend too, and I think a lot of people, in our listenership and kind of general community of, even before it became like really evident, like very early COVID, I think people were like, oh, this is not going to work, is it? And we've just been proven more and more as things have gone on, like the increase in homeschoolers and the increase in people being like, I'm getting out of the city because I don't like having the boot this much on my neck.
Yeah.
And people have very naturally reacted and been like, oh, the divide and conquer, centralized, peasants living within the castle walls thing isn't really optimal. Like, I don't want to be a peasant living under a king. I want to go out and just live peacefully, do my own thing, not be interrupted when some kind of crazy event's going on. I just want to carry on and live.
Yeah. Well, I think it was the whole COVID regime, I think, was very good for people to kind of realize that, but also to realize that you can. And so, like for Victoria and I, we never locked down. We wore masks if we were required to in things that we couldn't avoid. But if we went to a restaurant, they were like, oh, you got to put on a mask. We just wouldn't, or we'd leave. And I'd get in arguments with the person, be like, okay, so I walked in here without a mask, this number of feet, and all I want to do is walk fewer feet over to that table to sit down where I'll take the mask off. But you want me to put the mask on here? And they're like, yeah, that's the rule. And I'm like, okay, it's a bad rule, but I'm not going to eat here. I'll walk further to get out of here. And there were so many things like that, but I'm that kind of person. Like, I already had these beliefs or whatever, but I know people that are, probably mainstream liberal people who just went, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not staying in my house for a year. I'm going to go out and I'm going to go eat and I'm going to enjoy myself in a restaurant. And if I get COVID, I get COVID. I don't, that's just the way it is. Now, of course, I know tons of people who are hyper afraid of it. And actually, my family, I'm from a very large family. All of my sisters are conspiracy theorists like me, but my uncles are very divided on this. So we had 3 of my uncles who are super, super true believers, blue pilled, and 3 of my uncles who were already sort of red pilled and became just way more red pilled. And it's really, I think that's a good divide. I think it's happening. And then what's great about it too is that all of the people who were calling bullshit on this, it's the amount of evidence that is mounting it's so difficult for the blue pillar type people to go, oh no, I was right all along. And it's like, no, because you told me, and here's the text message that I was talking to you, Uncle. Here's the text message where you said, if I get the shot, I won't get. Well, we now know that's not true. And, and here's the text message where you said, oh, it's not that much. It's 12 days. No, it's not 12 days. We were stuck in our houses for, well, I wasn't stuck in my house, but the rules were 2 years. People were supposed to be in their houses. And all of these things that are happening now are a result of the things that you advocated for. And I think that they're confronted with a reality that is impossible to deny without looking foolish, and that's kind of getting their gears turning a little bit. And now, I'll get messages not really from my uncles because I think they're just too old and they're just kind of. But like my cousins, their kids, who will message me once in a while and go, "Did you know about this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they go, "This seems kind of crazy." And I'm like, "Yes, it is." Like my cousin in LA, he's a commie, and he was like, "I want to start a co-op," and I was like, "Okay." And then he started doing it, and he was like, "Did you realize how many regulations there are to prevent you from starting a co-op?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. That's why you guys have a homeless problem, because you can't build anything.
Yeah,
you can't try something
a huge
new."
thing that it's like a lot of these problems are created by regulation and overregulation.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
and the problem, the way to solve that isn't more regulation. That's what everyone yells for.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that there is a degree of people kind of waking up to that. Just, I'm sure there's going to be tons of people who will never wake up to that. But there's a really good comparison of like the way that Texas handles the homelessness and versus the way San Francisco and LA do. And so they did like a cross section of Austin, San Antonio, and Houston, and what their approach to it was, and it's been very successful, as opposed to LA and San Francisco, which has dumped billions and billions of dollars into it for 50 years. And it's worse. So and a lot of it, like Houston's reaction to it is Houston has very few building regulations. There's some, but it's usually deed restrictions. So if like I build a single family tract of land or whatever with a whole bunch of single family homes on it, I can't take one of those and turn it into an apartment complex. But it's not restricted by the city. It's restricted by the deed of the property. So their approach was this kind of deregulation. So now it's very easy and very fast for them to build small apartments that you can house homeless people with. And Austin's got a little bit of a different thing. The saving grace of Austin is that the city limits are a weird shape. So there's like portions of the county that come in really far but are not within the city limits. And once you're out of the city limits, building regulations are kind of null. You can do kind of whatever you want. So they built small tiny home communities for homeless people with very strict rules about you have to have a job, you have to pay rent. Even the rent is extremely small, but you have to have a job, you have to pay rent. If you're going to do drugs, it has to be in your house. You can't do it in public. And that's done very well for them. And then San Antonio took a slightly different approach as well, where they kind of did that same approach, but it was in like large communal living things where you come in and you're in a big room where you all sleep together, and based on your behavior, you graduate to getting a small room to yourself and then eventually get placed into a house. So like but in LA, you can't build anything. The regulations are onerous. I think they were saying that per unit in LA, they're spending $800,000 per unit.
Oh my God.
For homeless
tiny homes.
Like tiny homes are illegal in LA. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So they actually, there was a guy who was building those for the homeless, and then they removed them and destroyed them. But to build these apartment complexes, that when they factored out like the total cost, because from the state and city regulations, especially a bunch of the green regulations that they have, it ended up being $800,000 per unit to build it. So there's just no way that they're going to be able to build these, like house these people or in this fashion. It's got to be deregulated. And in Texas, I think San Antonio wasn't private, but in Texas, the one in Austin and the approach in Houston were both private. It was just people who cared about it. They went and did it. And that's kind of, that guy who wrote San Francisco, Michael Schellenberger. He's been involved in this for 20 or 30 years in San Francisco. And he says the issue there is that it's the homelessness industrial complex. Basically, if you solve it, you're out of a job. And there's so many things that are like that, because when it's compulsory funding, when it's private, you want to solve it so that it's done. Yeah. When it's public, you want it to perpetuate so that you can continue to get money. And that's I think the different approach. And I think that's a very, very long way of saying, I think that's kind of what we're starting to flow into, is that people are kind of going like, the reason everything sucks is because we're forced to pay for it, which gives us a bad product because we have no option. Yeah. But the private solution, homeschooling, or like my co-host Mason, his daughter goes to Montessori school, which is private. It's a totally different type of learning than public school, whereas like American public schools use the Prussian model, and Montessori education is basically the kids. I'm probably not going to summarize it correctly because I don't know a huge amount about it, but it's basically the kids get to choose what they want to do.
Like
So,
from a very young age.
yeah. So it's kind of like the teacher's there to facilitate you learning, but it's to facilitate you learning in the way that you want. So if you want to build blocks or whatever, well, we can do that. And this is actually kind of how I did homeschooling. My mom basically geared all of my curriculum toward things that I was interested in. So I didn't do just math problems. I did math problems that related to history because I like history. And so things like that, like and that's kind of the approach in that. And then you've got the people who do unschooling, like those kids that were at Chillderburg last year, which those kids are like super independent. They know how to talk to adults. They know how to avoid trouble. Like,
yeah,
that's one of the things that, people always, and it's not as widespread as the news makes it sound, but like they're always like, oh, our kids are getting abducted all the time. It's like, no, well, they're probably getting abducted because they don't know. Like, they're taught from a very young age, respect this authority figure that's an adult, so do what they say. Whereas like kids that have gone through homeschooling or unschooling kind of go like, you should be respectful to people generally just because it's a good way to be polite. But also, if somebody tells you to get in the van, don't get in the van.
Just because you're an adult doesn't mean you're in charge of me.
Yeah.
The way we're mostly conditioned as children in most public school models is
Yep.
like, yep, yes sir, no sir. Like,
right.
As long as you're older than me, you're in charge.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of coming out too in that the public schools are becoming increasingly violent because people sense this, and so like it's becoming increasingly violent. You see kids beating up their teachers, or there's a thing that I just saw on Twitter today where a teacher took some chick's cell phone away and she pepper sprayed him. and I was like, well, he's a public school teacher, so I don't really feel that bad.
Yeah, I had very mixed feelings about that. I was like, I mean, get your property back, and also you're in kid prison, so I kind of get assaulting one of the guards, but probably not great.
But it's one of those things where it's like those types of things don't. I mean, they probably do happen, but to a much lesser degree when you're afforded freedom. And kids are naturally they want to learn. They are curious. They want to know what's going on. And when you go into the public school model, typically that's trampled out of you. You just don't want to do it anymore. That's one of the reasons why my mom pulled me out of public school at a young age. Is she knew I was a bright young kid and I was really interested in learning and really wanted to know all this stuff. And as soon as I got into school, I hated it. I didn't want to look at books. I didn't want anything to do with it because it was just such a torture. And and she went, okay, and then I guess the final straw was they tried to put me on drugs because they were like, oh well, he must have ADHD or whatever. And
all right, give him a pill. This one's defective.
Yeah. My mom was like, no, we're not doing that. He's a little boy. He wants to run around and play and do stuff. Yeah. Like, he's going to come out of school and we're gonna homeschool, which was great. So.
I mean, bless parents like that because it makes a world of difference, and I mean, we see the results. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's I mean, I'm sure there's kids that were homeschooled that were not great, but like and I did have some public schooling. I went back to public school for high school, but it was extremely boring because I already knew everything, and that's the thing is when you're also given free reign to learn at your own pace. If you're a bright child, you learn much quicker, and you can learn the things that are interesting or that are interesting to you. Like I would say probably my writing is still pretty weak, but just because I don't care for it. But everything else was pretty advanced, and so I was I would finish my homeschool or my work in like my homework in class in high school, and then I would have the rest of the time and I chose to just work all the time. But that was that's what it gave me.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. I mean, I only had public schooling education, but like, well, I say education, I didn't learn shit. Like, I had an art teacher that told me I wasn't creative, and now I've been working almost 10 years in the creative industry. And then also, like, the only classes I was interested in was like creative stuff, history, and writing, and everything else was just a wash. And so I'd spend like all my free time doubling down on that stuff because I wasn't really getting what I wanted out of those classes. Like, I wrote on my own time. I read history on my own time. I was creative on my own time. But yeah, like, school wasn't for me, and it's not for a lot of people, I think. If you have an aptitude for something or like an interest and you're being like constantly choked into this little box that they want you to fit in, like the Prussian model, it's not doing anything for you. It's just ticking a box for them.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you say that. The only class I ever failed, primary through high school, ever was art.
Damn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was grade 10 art, which was the one art credit that I needed, and the one time I ever got suspended or in any real trouble at all is because I flipped off the teacher. I failed by 1%.
Standard.
Yeah. My parents had to meet with the principal and everything.
I can tell he's Canadian because he says grade 10 instead of 10th grade.
Oh, yeah. That's something I didn't know. Every time I hear about the little differences, I think about that scene in Inglourious Bastards, like holding your fingers.
Oh, yeah, this and this,
three, that's how they tell he's a spy.
Yeah.
No, in Britain, you say like year 7, year 8, year 6.
Oh, interesting.
So it's all sorts different and fucked up. But so I guess we should get into Chillderburg Go.
That might be a good idea. We haven't. I am very fascinated by the homeschooling talk, but I, as someone who's kind of like new to hearing about Chillderburg, everything I've heard has been from BR. I want to know more.
Okay, well, this year, so every year, pretty much, it's a big cookout next to the lake. I think 3 years ago, I started inviting musical acts and comedy. So on the 27th, which is a Saturday, so Chillderburg is the 26th through the 29th at Rebecca Creek Campground. The 27th, Robbie the Fire is going to come and do comedy again. We got Owen Glass coming and doing music. I don't know if you remember Phil. He's the pseudolectual on Twitter. He's a big Bitcoin guy, but he's also a musician, so he's going to play. We got a couple of other comedians coming out from Austin. Brian, who is a comedian from Fort Worth up here, he's going to come down and do it. So that'll be fun. And then it's really kind of free reign to do whatever you want. A lot of people bring different types of things to cook out. I'll bring probably a lot of steak and stuff to cook, and I'll bring the griddle if anybody wants to use the griddle. But there's also barbecues there, charcoal barbecues, so those are available. It's just basically people hanging out and finding stuff to do. It's very relaxing. I'm hoping the lake will be full of water so that people can go down there. It was pretty low when I was down there a couple weeks ago, but it looks like this month it's going to be extremely wet. And the other good thing about it being extremely wet is that we'll probably be able to have fires this year, unlike last year where there was a burn ban. And I think that kind of takes something out of the evening camaraderie where you can kind of like campfire hop and just, what are you guys talking about? What are you guys doing? How did you get here? And that sort of stuff. Now that we're going to be able to do that again, I think we're going to be able to have sort of that kind of rotation that is a lot of fun.
That was probably my favorite part. For one, like I said earlier, people get interesting at night at Chillderburg. Everyone's relaxing and, enjoying themselves however they prefer. And my first year, we'd set up our tents. We got in like fairly late. And I was like just about finished and chilling a little bit. And I hear a familiar voice from one campsite away. Mr. Scott Horton himself. I'm like, for anyone who doesn't know, big anti-war guy, great writer and great advocate on that stuff. But I hear him and Tommy Salmons like from the next camp over. I'm like, is that Scott Horton? And so I was like, I'm not gonna go over there and like be a dork tonight, but tomorrow morning,
right?
I went over there and and hung out with them for like most of the day. It was awesome. We just sat there and chatting, and people go from campground to campground. Like people were going, and Rachel came up. She came up to us, was like, because she was performing. I don't know. She didn't perform that year, but she performed last year and crushed it. But she just walked up to us and was like, "Yeah, can I do some stand up for you guys?" It was like, hell yeah. That's ballsy as hell to just walk up to like 5-6 people. Like, you're not guaranteed a laugh or anything, and just sharing what she does, shared her art and her kind of like side hustle stuff, and making hot sauce, great hot sauce.
She's also like she's super fun in person, and then also when you kind of like look at her intellectual stuff too, you're just like, wow, this like you're a comedian, but you're also pretty smart and have like an interesting perspective on things. She was on Pete's show, Pete Canonia's show a while ago, and like their conversation was super interesting to me. And I was like, this is a side of you I didn't know. I thought it was more just we're here to cook out and party and tell jokes and that sort of stuff. Yeah, that kind of thing. And then she was on that, and I was like, wow, this is pretty interesting. This is a different side of this person. So I'm going to talk to her a little bit about that this year.
Yeah, there's so many people, like, if you just sit down with, and even if you might know them from online or whatever, if you're sitting around the campfire and chilling with people, you'll probably see a completely different side of them, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's one of the cool things about and that's actually the Chillderburg town idea started, I think, at Chillderburg Dose around the campfire. Was Carr and Rollo were basically joking at each other across about. So I have this game show that I want to at some year do called Jacob Lindsay's House of Mild Inconvenience. So it's basically it's a house. It's like Big Brother or one of those types of shows where everybody's in the house, but in the house it's just everything is just slightly inconvenient. So like all the furniture is damp, and like all the articles in the magazines don't complete, and like in order to have a hot shower, somebody has to like sit on something awkwardly to like turn the hot water on, like things like that. But so Rollo and Carr are going back and forth on all of the like slightly inconvenient things that they could do, and somehow during that conversation, we started talking about the Chillderburg town idea. My wife might have brought it up because she's very into that idea, and I think we were driving in the car one day, and she was like, "Man, I wish we could just be around the Chillderburg people all the time." I was like, "Well, you can just, we can start our own town." And she was like, "You can do that?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's America. We can do it."
Yeah. We build towns all the time.
Yeah.
Everything's a city. If it has like 5 trailers and a gas station, it's a city.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, people do it. So and so that was kind of the birth of that. But it's great because you start getting ideas. Start like. Basically, it's making the connections. It's kind of having it's making the connections and then getting the seeds of new ideas that you can kind of pursue. And I think it's just fun for people. Then you get to meet people that like Rollo. He's got a Bitcoin podcast, and I think it was 2 years ago. Some like 17-year-old or 18-year-old showed up and was like, "Hey, where's Rollo?" And it was like Rollo's biggest fan. But he's like some kid that lives in Texas is a huge fan of this podcast that I don't know how many listens their show gets, but if it was like listening to mine, I only get like 100 listens per episode. So or 100 downloads. I don't even know if people listen. So like if somebody showed up and was like, "I'm a fan of your show," I'd be like, that is the most bizarre thing.
Dude, niche internet. What is it, Nathan? Niche internet micro celebrity. Yeah, when that, dude, I don't want to like blow smoke up my own ass or anything. First year, no one had a clue who I was, and it was awesome because I just got to like chill and like experience everything as like a camper. Second year, we arrived and people were like, "Oh, is that B.R?" I'm like, "Oh no!" Oh yeah, is B.R here? Yeah, I'm like
And there were a lot of people who actually I got messages from people going, "Hey, is B.R going to be there?" And
I'm like, "No, I'm not an attraction. I'm just chilling. Like,
right.
Please come to Chillderburg, but do your own thing."
Yeah, and I think that's also one thing that people like about it is like Scott goes there, and it for him is he's not a show, and he gets an opportunity to just be one of the guys kind of. And there's a lot of people that are there that I think have like some sort of internet following, or in Scott's case, a very wide following. Yeah. And they get an opportunity to not be on, like they don't have to be there to give a speech or whatever. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like come and chill with me. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Chilling. No show.
It's nice to not have to put on a face.
Right.
Yeah, and that's very much what it is. It's not like an LP meetup or whatever where it's like you're there to present in a certain way. Like, no, we're doing our thing.
Yeah. I think it's good. So, and this year I think it's going to be. So the new site is kind of interesting. It's like there's 2 creeks that kind of come together, and then like we're in that edge of the creeks, and like I said, the water was pretty low last or when I was down there, so I'm hoping that that'll fill up and we'll be able to get some good swimming. But if not, the lake is not too far away, and so you can kind of just go down to the lake. But it's going to be this year. It's going to be a little bit more condensed. So last year was just such a huge swath of campsites, but this year the campsites are kind of more condensed, maybe about half the size of the space is about half the size of last year. We don't have the campsites at the old place had a restriction on the number of people that were supposed to be there, although we didn't. People just kind of forever.
Yeah, it was like, good luck policing this mess. Like,
yeah,
not a chance.
But this year, I was down there talking to her, and she was like, "Well, pretty much everything from here down, you guys set up wherever you want to set up, and it, and then I got a pair, but like it's basically we're the only group that's down there. There's not going to be anybody else. And then what's kind of cool about this site too is they've got like actual bathrooms and actual showers,
incredible,
which is a big difference, and running water, and there is limited electricity, but it's there's like 2 outlets or whatever. We'll use those for the show, but so there's that down there. It's really cool. And also from like just the things that I'm interested in, like from a business standpoint, I'm kind of curious how this campground operates, and like because that's sort of what I would like to kind of eventually go to is like I want my property where I live there and stuff, but also maybe the lower 5 acres or whatever is a campground that is easy to maintain, that kind of thing. And so I'm kind of curious about like, this is a private campground. How do they operate it? How do they, that kind of stuff. And so I was talking to her a little bit about that, but it basically, it looks like the other one. It's pretty, it's on the lake. It's in Texas Hill Country. It looks like we're going to have good weather right now. I'm hoping that the forecast stays that way.
Just a little bit of rain so we have a lake to swim in and we can have fires and then clear up and beautiful, gorgeous blue skies.
Yeah.
Wait,
I think last year's
lake?
What's that?
Jacob was saying it's like pretty low right now. So like, apparently there's meant to be like 15 days of rain between now and then.
Yeah.
So
It's just 15 days of straight rain, which I was asking her about it, and she says it depends on how much rain we get, whether it'll fill up or not. But she says usually at the beginning of the month, they just get a deluge and it fills up. And she says, and then because if they don't open the dam, it backs up into the creek. So she said that hopefully we'll get that. But she said sometimes it's not. So we just have to walk further down to get to the water.
Oh, so it's like walking distance from the campsite?
It's a long walk, but yeah.
Okay. like a longer walk than from my campsite to the other end of camp last year?
Yeah, it's longer than that.
Okay, gotcha.
So people may choose to just drive around and go to the lake in a different spot, but you can walk down the creek all the way. Victoria and I walked down most of it, and I could see the lake. I didn't go all the way down, but I was like, this is a long walk. Unless this fills up, then we can all swim right here. Yeah. But I was looking at pictures that they took last year around the time and last year was a drought year too, and it was way full. So I guess they just didn't open the dam, because like the way that the Colorado River Authority does it is if there's a drought, they usually push all of the water down places where there's farming, and so all of our lakes up here, and actually Lake Travis, where we were on last year, was really low because they had pushed all that water down to like Canyon Lake for the reservoir there, and then further down south for the orange growers and all the other types of food and stuff that they grow here. So, which makes sense. I mean, that's what the whole system is for, is to make sure that they can grow food.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it could be fun. Hopefully, can actually make things line up to work that way.
Yeah, good. We haven't talked about that yet. Yeah, we're trying to get Nathan down, so everyone's cyberbullying him into getting a ticket. But
yeah, so far things are lining up in a way that it looks like it's likely. Legally, if you're listening to this, if you come up and assassinate me, you can take all my stuff. I'm pretty sure that's not against the law if I consent to it.
I have questions, but I'm not gonna do that now. You're just a loot drop waiting to happen at Chillderburg.
Just literally a loot drop.
Okay.
It'll keep me on my toes for the entire weekend.
You're gonna be like 3 White Claws deep, and someone's gonna approach you with a knife.
Just immediately
Yeah. Hopefully we have a lake, because oh my god, that was a godsend last year. I mean, for one, hopping in the lake. Nice. Oh, it cures you of all ailments, and then I didn't know this my first year, but there was a shower as you leave the campground.
Yeah.
I figured it out last year, and I was like, oh wow, so I have to stink like a hippie for 14 hours on the way home.
Right.
Sorry, SOR. My first year, I just took a dip in the lake, and I was like, I guess that's as good as it's getting.
Right. Yeah.
All the way back to Arizona. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, at the old campsite, there was that shower, but you had to drive to it.
Yeah,
it
it's
so
like right at the entrance.
Hey, Carr and Bird were asking about this because the new site has like the shower house there, and there's also a bunkhouse, and there's some glamping sites that people have gotten. There was last year, I don't know if you remember this, there was like a car accident.
Oh, I think that was before I got there.
Okay, yeah, there was some sort of car accident. I don't think it was anybody for us, but like for some reason that has become like a legend in the people that were hanging out with Carr and Bird, and I think they maybe blew it up more than I got offended.
Very naturally.
Yeah, because like they asked me about it when I was on their show, and so I'm wondering like if we'll get something like that this year, some sort of weird event that like we had 2 years ago. We had Grillberg,
Yep.
and so that was just a weird rando.
We converted a random who got locked out of his car. Yeah.
Nice guy.
Really? How did that go? Like how?
Oh, he was Grillberg became one of us.
Yeah. He was camping. He was car camping actually, real close to our sites, and he couldn't, for some reason, he couldn't close the hatch on his Subaru, and so he got out and closed it, but he had shut the door and he left his keys in the car, and so it was all locked. So he came over and was like, "Hey, do any of you guys know how to break into a car?"
So, not realizing he's talking to a bunch of anarchists.
Yeah. And actually, last year we would have had somebody who could have gotten in, but that year,
of Uncensored Tactical.
Yeah, he would have been able to figure it out.
Going again this year.
I hope so.
You better be, Pat. We'll be watching.
Yeah, but so Grillberg, he came over and he was like, "Hey, do any of you know how to like break into a car?" And we were already, I mean, it was like 10 o'clock at night. We were already pretty hammered, and so we all just walked over, kicked the tires, tried the handle, and we're like, I don't know. And I was like, well, you know what? I have extra tents. So if you want, I'll set up a tent for you. You just come camp with us. And he was like, oh, that's so great. And then the next day he left. He had something to do, and I said, well, yeah, come back and hang out with us if you want. But he's like, no, I got stuff to do. But then like he showed up when we were cooking the fat conkins, like mastered the grill, brought a whole bunch of ice with him, was like running around filling everybody's cooler up with ice. It was cool. It was just a neat dude. Has nothing to do. He doesn't care about politics. Not interested in it at all. I think his job is he's a helicopter pilot for like when you like pick up people who are injured from like rural places.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I think that's what his job is, something like that. But he also is great on the grill. Just a funny guy.
A true Renaissance man.
Yeah. He's just an interesting guy. He came last year too, briefly, and then there's a place called Hippie Hollow down there by Austin, which is like a nude beach. So he's like, I'm gonna go to Hippie Hollow, and I was like, that'll be good for you.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
You have out radicalized most of us.
Yes, yeah. But it was good. He's a nice guy, and it was an interesting thing. We had Samaroff was telling this really complicated joke around the fire, and like, I don't remember what the joke was, but like he got to the punchline and everybody was like, because like it was just way too complicated of a joke. And so Grillberg stumbles over. I think he had taken some mushrooms, and he stumbles over and he goes, "I got an easier one for you," and just tells this like blaster of like, I'm pretty sure it was a racist joke, but so much more simple than Anthony's joke. And then Anthony's like,
Man knew his audience. He's like, all right, you guys are like 10 deep. I'm on shrooms. Listen to this. What a hero. So I've got two more things for you, Jacob, before we sign off here.
Okay.
One, how do you respond to the accusations that Chillderburg is a cult?
Wait, is that a real thing?
It's not a cult. It's it's a group of people with similar interests that are interested in taking over a town and dominating people in that town politically. And we do have a ceremony, which I know a lot of cults have a ceremony, but I would say we're not a cult. I've not applied for my tax exempt status, so
Missing out.
yeah,
Missing a trick.
Yeah, but yeah, that's the ongoing thing is people keep saying it's like a cult, and it's like a cult, but it's not a cult. So.
All right. We'll be watching.
Right.
And I guess I just wanted we did a little PSA last year that anyone with questions can look up. Chillderburg PSA. If you just type that into Spotify or any podcatcher, I'm sure it'll mostly apply to this year. But are there any things we want to kind of cover just in a general sense for people who might have questions?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that's a little bit different, because it's at a different location, it's a little bit more strict on people just showing up and camping. So basically, I have to pay them for the people that come in. And so if you have not gotten your tickets this year, get those because I need that money to pay them. So, but like last year, I know a lot of people just showed up and they just showed up because they weren't really stopping anybody from coming in. They just said, "Oh, we're with Chillderburg," and they kind of waved them through. So they're pretty at that campsite. They were pretty lax on it just because it's not their primary mission. Whereas this is a private campsite, they are a little bit more strict on that. So that's just something to keep in mind. Yeah, most of the stuff from last year apply. Bring bug spray, bring sunscreen, bring food. If you want to share food, that's great. There's charcoal grills, so if you want to cook in the charcoal grills, bring charcoal. I will bring my griddle, which I'll have a couple of tanks of propane, so people can cook on the griddle if they want. But that's pretty much it. There's not that much different. Getting into it is a little bit awkward. I mean, I guess the old campsite was kind of like a long drive to get there as well. But this is like you're driving through like a neighborhood, so it's kind of like a weird. It doesn't look like you're going to the right place until you actually get there, and then you're like, oh, here it is. Because there's
important to know because most people they'll get to the neighborhood and be like, I fucked up.
Yeah. So it is through a neighborhood, and it's just that you just once you get to the end, basically end of the road at the neighborhood, that's where the campsite is.
Will there be food vendors this year?
Oh,
I have not heard from any of them yet. So I know that Cook Shanty isn't going to make it this year. If anybody wants to cook like a communal meal or anything like that, like I said, I've got the griddle. If you want to plan that out, we can. I'll have a big tent up for like we did last year for anybody who wants to kind of cook or sit under the tent. The food truck guy who had like the Wagyu burgers and stuff like that was really good. I haven't heard from him, and if anybody knows his contact information, let me know because I thought he had mailed me.
Wait, there were Wagyu burgers? I don't know.
Oh my guy. I will tell you more about this food truck off air, but they were excellent. Smoothies,
how much
burgers.
are the Wagyu burgers? That sounds like
I don't know.
I'm just being cheap. I'm curious. They're expensive.
I only got a smoothie and Appeal to Liberty got some other stuff from them, but very, very good food, and everyone was hitting them up. So
so hopefully it comes this year.
Yeah.
And if anybody listening has a food truck, you're welcome to come too. There's no additional vendor cost. It's just the camping cost. So if you're going to come and you want to sell your stuff,
awesome.
Pay the camping cost and then just come down.
That's massive. And
I should rent a hot dog truck. Just have them.
There you go. it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Like all the vendors are really appreciated. It's nice to have kind of extra stuff that you can pick up if you forgot something, or just great services on offer there.
Yeah. I'm hoping that pirate medicine guy comes again.
He was awesome. Yeah,
he was really cool dude.
my lady was like so interested in his setup, and I mean she was like chatting up a storm with him. He was fascinating. Yeah,
he was a super interesting guy. So
like an OG kind of any government like alternative market kind of guy.
I think he was also like a Native American. I think he was saying that he's from one of the tribes in Oklahoma or something like that. I mean he looked mostly white to me, but like also I don't know. But I think he was saying that some of it was like some of the stuff that he practiced was like traditional healing methods and stuff like that. But he had that like somebody, I don't remember who. I didn't try it because I actually didn't get sunburned last year too much. but like somebody got real sunburned and used some of that, and it like the sunburn was gone the next day. It was wild. Yeah, like it's like some sort of like silver ointment or something. I'm not sure what, but it worked.
It was cool. I don't get it, but it was cool. Lots of stuff like that. Lots of alternative kind of hippie stuff mixed in with a bunch of gun guys, crypto guys, anti-war people, all sorts of awesome freaks and geeks.
Yeah. Yep. So if anybody wants to sell stuff there, just come down. Let me know because it's kind of helpful for me to know. But it's just a camping cost, no vendor fees.
And you can get the camping tickets, Chillderburg.com, which will be in the description. Make sure you grab those before heading on down. I guess the last thing is kind of the rules are, it should be pretty self-explanatory from Pop-Up Anarchist Village, but it's common sense. Treat people with respect. You know, be a good neighbor and don't leave the place trashed.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And so like, I don't really care what you do. I don't think the camp cares that much what you do. Just be respectful of the people around you, and that's it.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah. Any last things you want to mention?
No, I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody. It's 20 days away, so as of we're recording this, so I'm excited. I think it's gonna be. I like the location. I think as long as the lake situation works out, then it's gonna be the perfect location. We may do it several years in a row.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jacob. For everyone listening, May 26th through the 29th, Memorial Day weekend, effectively, down in Rebecca Creek Campground, Texas. Hopefully we'll see you there. Hopefully we'll be able to drag Nathan down, and who knows? Maybe we'll record an in-person episode.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of that. So
I'm bringing a videographer with me this time, so it'll be it won't just be in the back of like of someone's car. We'll actually have some a little bit of art direction, I think.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, so it should be cool. Lots of great people there, lots of great community to be had, and good hell of a way to start the summer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's almost summer. That's gonna be nice.
Canadians like, what's summer?
What has happened? It was like 40, 45 degrees the day before yesterday. It was awful.
45. Do you guys do Celsius or Fahrenheit up there?
We do Celsius. I just convert it because most people I interact with and listen to this are American.
Yeah, I know that. Like I was one of the Canadian people was telling me that Canadians do metric for non-personal things, but things that are personal, they use imperial. And so you would say what your height is in feet, but you wouldn't say how far something away is in miles.
Yeah.
What the hell?
No,
which is interesting.
We use like meters for distance. For height, you'd be like, he's 6'4", he's 5'10", whatever.
Yeah.
But like also interestingly, like tailoring and all of that is also done in imperial. Like
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Some construction. Like whenever I build something, most of the directions are imperial. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, I hope we can get you down. Like it's definitely summer here. I was just cleaning the pool. It's 95 degrees out, so
lovely.
Yeah. No, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing before we go, Jacob. We need some dad advice for our listeners.
Some dad advice?
Yeah, we do that. We put everyone on the spot and we ask them to give our listeners fatherly advice.
Oh, okay. Let's think here. So, okay, I'll give you guys the advice that my dad always gave me is work hard, be honest, don't be a sneak, and if you say you're going to do something, do it.
Incredible. Nice. There you go, people. All right. Thank you so much, Jacob, for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you at Chillderburg.
Yes.
Yeah, hopefully soon.
All right. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.